Gotcha. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Port Colborne City Hall. We are going to be following two agendas this evening. We're going to be following our Committee of the Whole agenda, and that will be followed by our council meeting. So we're going to start off with a prayer by Councillor Ron Bodner, and that will be followed by the national anthem from Mr. Joel Longfellow. Councillor Bodner.
Dear Lord, we ask for your guidance as we meet here tonight. Help us make wise and thoughtful decisions that will benefit our city and its residents. Amen.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons' command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Well, thank you, Joel. Well done as always.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My pleasure as always.
Madam Clerk, are there any addendum items this evening?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There is one this evening. The presentation to the Port Colborne Hornets has been withdrawn and will be rescheduled to the June 25th council meeting.
Thank you, Ashley. Members of council, if I can have a motion to confirm the agenda, please. Councillor Desmarais, Councillor Doucette. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Are there any disclosures of interest this evening? With none, we'll move on to items requiring a separate discussion this evening. Councillor Steele.
Item 1 for the clerk.
Further items. Councillor Doucette. Councillor Desmarais.
Item 8, please.
Further items. With none, motion to receive the remainder of the items, please. Councillor Bodner, Councillor Doucette. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to presentations, and if I can call Councillor Steele and Councillor Kenny up to the podium to join myself. To those members of the gallery, as well as those that are watching on COGECO, we are going to take this opportunity this evening to present some checks to some different organizations throughout the city of Port Colborne and, in fact, throughout the entire region of Niagara. Twice a year, Port Colborne Hydro, which is a company that brings in a dividend from Canadian Niagara Power based on the lease, now sale of our hydro company, is able to accrue dollars over the period of a year. With that, Council has instructed, as a shareholder, has instructed Port Colborne Hydro and the board to give out about $50,000 in permissive grants, I think about $45,000 in permissive grants throughout the year. And many of you are going to be here to receive those checks that the board has in fact agreed upon. So with that, I'm going to call Councillor B. Kenny, but Councillor Kenny and Councillor Steele both sit on the board, along with myself, Len Hunt, and Gary Bruno. And I'm going to call upon Councillor Kenny to start off the presentations with her allocation of checks to different organizations. Councillor Kenny?
And I wanted to point out too, as Vice Chair of the Hydro Board, that we started 2 different processes this year. We took our money and we divided it because what happens is some groups forget to submit by the deadline, and then after they come back to us and say, oh, I wanted to apply, and they never had a chance to apply and the time was up. So we took the money and divided it into same amount of money, but we let some people apply first and then some came later. So It's my pleasure now to present to the 79 Linton Davy Squadron of the Royal Canadian Air Cadets, Carol Began, and it's a $1,500 check. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Good job, guys.
Great job. Thanks.
Good job, yeah.
Thanks for your work.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think
Would you like to say something?
on behalf of the Lytton Davies Air Cadet Sponsoring Committee, I'd like to thank the Hydro Board for the support they've given the Air Cadets over the years that I've been sponsoring chair. Thank you.
The second group is the Boys and Girls Club of Niagara, Raymond Wallace. And this is this one was given to, I forgot to say that, for the Air Cadets. The funds will assist with flights simulators for their training of their cadets. And with the Boys and Girls Club of Niagara, it's to support the operation and delivery of Kids Zone and Teen Zone programs which operate in the city of Port Colborne. It's a $1,000 check. Congratulations. Thank you.
Great job, guys. Thank you. Great work.
Great, very good. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. And again, on behalf of the Boys and Girls Club, the staff, the board, and volunteers, and the children, we'd like to thank Port Colborne Hydro. This is the third year in a row that they've committed funds to us and allows us to continue to run our program. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next group is the French Golden Age Club. If you could come forward, Linda Johnson and Carmen Brunette. These funds will be used to update outdated kitchen equipment and will allow the center the opportunity to continue to offer activities and programs for Francophones and other community seniors. And it's a $3,000 check.
Good job, guys.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Carmen.
Great job. Congratulations.
Welcome.
Thanks, guys.
Well done. Congratulations.
Merci beaucoup.
Yeah. See.
On behalf of the French Golden Age Club, we'd like to thank the Port Colborne Hydro and the City of Port Colborne. This kind of support for our seniors is always appreciated. Thank you very, very much.
I don't believe there was anyone in attendance for the next one. It's the Navy League of Canada, because I believe this is their annual review this evening, and so there's no one there. But the funds will be used to assist with the cost of updating the officer and cadet uniforms to meet the current dress regulations, and the check is in the amount of $2,900.
Thank you, B. I have the Showboat Festival Theatre, Carol Brisley. These funds will be used to assist with the cost of bringing professional theatre productions to Port Colborne. The amount is $500.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh. Thank you. On behalf of our wonderful Port Colborne Showboat Festival Theatre, thank you very much for your support. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Next, we have the Port Colborne Concert Band of Brenda Green. Sponsorship of 6 summer concerts on Thursday nights during July and August at H.H. Knoll Lakeview Park in the Mark Fairchild Memorial Bandstand.
I'm not Brenda Green, I'm her mother. She's got a concert tonight and couldn't make it, so I stepped in. She's not 40 years older than she was last week. Thanks, Vance. Thank you.
And the amount is $2,750.
Fine, thank you.
Thank you.
Brenda would like to thank the City Council and Port Colborne Hydro for this. There'll be concerts starting in the park Thursday night, the first Thursday in July, at Praise Bring Your Lawn Chairs. Rain or shine, they usually play. My husband did it for 50 years. He passed away, and now Brenda's done it. This is her 13th year, so come and enjoy concert music. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Women's Place of South Niagara for $250. Assist with the cost of providing programs and services to women and children who have been victims of abuse.
Thank you very much.
And your name?
I'm Stephanie Thompson.
And Stephanie Thompson's here for Women's Place.
On behalf of Women's Place of South Niagara, I'd like to thank Port Colborne Hydro, the Mayor, and Council for this check. We will use this to help women and children who are escaping domestic violence. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll now call upon Barbara Middlestead of the Niagara Antique Power Association. This is a check for $1,000, and the funds will be used to assist with repairs to the roofs on 3 of the historic buildings on their property. Barbara? Good job.
I'd like to speak for Niagara Antique Power and thank not only Port Colborne Hydro, Mayor Vance Badaway, the members over here, and the City of Port Colborne for supporting us. 40 years this year we have put on a show, and with this money we can repair our roofs and continue to show the young people how blacksmithing is done and what actual log cabins looked like back in the 1800s. Thank you very much.
Good job, Barbara. If I can now call upon Pam Swig-Janjak of Port Cares. I have a check. Oh, I have it, Linda Reinhardt. I'm sorry. There you are. This is a check for $3,500 to assist the Reaching Out and Changing Lives campaign to raise funds to support, expand, and renovate the Port Cares Reach Out Center. Linda, well done. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Great work.
Thank you. On behalf of Port Cares, I would like to thank Port Colborne Hydro and the City of Port Colborne for this donation to our Port Cares Reach Out Center capital campaign. Thank you so much.
I also have a check here for the Port Colborne Feline Initiative, $1,000. I don't believe anybody's here this evening. They're out catching the cats. And lastly, I do have a check here for Port Colborne Minor Baseball Association in the amount of $2,600. And he just got here just in time in that rain. These funds will assist with the purchase of a storage shed to hold the association's equipment.
Thank you.
You're wet.
I want to thank everybody for giving a donation for us. And last year we had we started a pitch hit and run, and this year, and we had 2 kids out of 32 kids go to the Sky Dome for the Toronto Blue Jays out of Ontario and Quebec. Out of 32, we had 2 from Port Colborne. This year we had a sectional, besides our local, 4 kids went.
Good stuff.
So, I mean, the kids are pretty enthusiastic about that.
Great. Thank you.
So anyway, thank you very much.
Great work. Thanks, guys. Members of Council, we're going to move down to delegations, and we have 2 delegations this evening. It's my pleasure to introduce the first delegation, a young lady who I've already heard make a presentation at Regional Council, and we were so impressed that we wanted to bring her down to Port Colborne and share in her enthusiasm with respect to her presentation on a blue community. Members of Council, it's my pleasure now to introduce you to Robin Hamlin. Robin, if you want to come on up, and the floor is all yours. Welcome.
Okay. One off to start. Thank you so much, Mayor Badaway, members of council and staff, for having me here. You have no idea how happy I am coming here to talk to all of you. My name is Robin Hamlin. I'm 13 years old, and I'm a grade 8 student from Kingston. I'm here tonight to talk to you about the world's water problem and what we can do to help. Last June, my teacher showed our class a video called Blue Gold, World Water Wars, a documentary made in 2008. And this movie taught me so much, and it made me want to do something about our crisis. Just some of the facts that I've learned and really scare me are these. Our Earth, the blue planet, holds 97% salt water and 3% fresh water. Almost all of that 3% is already polluted. Because Canada is a water-rich country, we tend to take our water for granted, and we use up water faster than it can be replenished through natural systems. Just around the Great Lakes, we pump almost 3.2 trillion liters of water a day. 7.4 billion liters do not get returned. Most provinces charge big water companies next to nothing to take waters from our springs and aquifers, and whole watersheds are now threatened. Canada, Russia, and Brazil are the water-rich countries of the world. As fresh water starts to disappear or become polluted, the rest of the world will look to these three places for water. America has severe water problems and is already putting canals able to move Canadian water into America. I know that the Great Lakes are our main target, as both America and Canada share them. What is really scary, though, is that they are saying this will probably happen within 10 to 20 years from now, when I'm a young adult. After seeing this movie, I wanted to do something, and I told my mom that. And she said if I really wanted to do something, I could write a letter to our mayor and tell him my concerns. I did, and Mayor Garrettson invited me to meet with him. I was very nervous and I wanted to be prepared for my meeting. So I ended up emailing the director of the movie, Sam Botso. I asked him if there was anything specific to Kingston that I should talk about in this meeting. He got me in touch with Maud Barlow, who is the author of the book that the movie was based on. For those of you who do not know who Maud is, she belongs to a group called the Council of Canadians. The Council of Canadians is an organization that brings Canadians together to act for social, economic, and environmental justice in Canada and around the world. I was told that asking my mayor to make Kingston a blue community would be a positive step in the right direction. A blue community treats water as belonging to no one and is the responsibility of all. It must be governed by principles that allow for reasonable use, equal distribution, and reasonable treatment in order to preserve water for nature and for future generations like me. There are 3 resolutions that need to be passed in order for a community to become a blue community. The first one is banning the sale of bottled water in public facilities and at municipal events. Bottled water companies are selling us our own water that we can easily get from our own tap at a huge profit. To manufacture 1 liter of bottled water, 3 to 5 liters of water is required. Bottled water companies require massive amounts of fossil fuels to manufacture and to transport their products around the world, which contributes to a whole other topic, which is our climate change. And as for the recycling of these bottles, too many end up in our landfills. There was an article in the Toronto Sun that said as few as 50% of the water bottles Torontonians consume every day are actually being recycled. This means as many as 65 million empty plastic water bottles per year end up as garbage in the landfill waste site. And that's just Toronto. In order to convince people to spend 200 to 3,000 times what they spend on tap water, bottled water companies say that their water is safer. But this isn't true. Bottled water is regulated as a food product under the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. This means that the water bottling plants are inspected, on average, only once every 3 years. Municipal tap water is tested continuously, both before and during treatment. They say that they are providing healthier alternatives, but we have to open our eyes and look at the costs. Overpumping of our precious water, destruction of our watersheds, and all the greenhouse gases that they've produced in trying to give us a healthier alternative that we can easily get from our own tap. The right thing to do is to proudly promote yourselves as an environmentally aware city, and to get water from your tap, or from water fountains equipped with spouts to accommodate water bottles. The second resolution is recognizing water as a human right. We want water to be used responsibly and distributed fairly. Now, I know that some communities are scared of this resolution. They think it's an international issue. I completely disagree. I think we need to start small, community by community, and then this will grow into a national level, and then hopefully into an international level. I know we can do this. The third and last resolution is promoting publicly financed, owned and operated water and wastewater services. We need to protect our water resources and keep our water services publicly owned. When water services are privatized, the workforce usually gets cut and the price to the customer gets increased. In the end, service is poorer and the company ends up with the bigger profits. The City of Port Colborne already has publicly owned and operated water and wastewater services, so this resolution shouldn't be difficult to pass. I was invited to present to our City Council on September 20th. They had already banned the sale of bottled water, and their water and wastewater services were already publicly owned. They passed the Human Rights Resolution and declared themselves a blue community. After that, I did a mass mailing in November to mayors across Ontario, telling them what I had done and if I could come and meet with them to try and make their community a blue community. I had an overwhelming responses. Since then, I've made trips in December, February, a big one over my March break, and one in April. I've had 16 different meetings with mayors and councillors. I've had presented to 6 different councils: Clarington, Caledon, Norfolk, Pickering, St. Catharines, and Niagara Falls, and had the mayors of Ajax, Burlington, and Owen Sound present for me at their own council meetings. And I'm extremely excited to say that the town of Ajax, the city of St. Catharines, the city of Niagara Falls, and the municipality of Clarington are now blue communities. The county of Norfolk passed the banning of bottled water and the Human Rights Resolution, and the city of Burlington passed the Human Rights Resolution. I'm awaiting word on the rest. I've been invited back to present at council meetings in Chatham-Kent, Cambridge, Brantford, Guelph, Newmarket, Meaford, Oshawa, and Vaughan. Lastly, I will be speaking at the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Initiative Conference in Quebec City at the end of this month. And at the end of July, I will be meeting with the Mayor O'Keefe of St. John's, Newfoundland. I'm here tonight to ask all of you to help me save our water. I can't do this without you. Please pass these important resolutions to make the city of Port Colborne a blue community. There are sample resolutions in this blue community project guide that is in your package. I'm on a mission, and I know it's going to take me a long time to make a real difference in the world. And I'm starting small by going from community to community. I eventually want to work my way up to presenting to the premiers of each of our provinces, and then hopefully to the Prime Minister. I know this is a big dream, but I'm determined to get there. But I can't do this without your help. I'm only a teenager, and they will not listen to me unless I have people on my side that think and feel the same way as I do. I believe in the power of one, and I want to believe that even though our reality looks extremely bad right now, if we band together and work with people, one community at a time, we can save our planet's life source. Thank you.
Robin, well done once again. Members of council, any questions or comments? Councillor Doucette.
Being as part of the environmental committee, I agree with this young lady, and I think we do need to do something, and if we do a little bit at a time, eventually everyone will believe in doing it as well. So I would like to, I don't know if we need a leave, or do we need to see this again? Do we need to take a good look at it and bring it back on the 25th? I don't care how it happens, but I would like to vote on all 3 of those issues in some way, shape, or form.
If you may, Councillor, put a resolution forward for leave so we can entertain a resolution.
Will do.
Do I have a seconder to that, please? Councillor Kenny. Any questions or comments to that for leave? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Councillor Doucette, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm looking to see if I can find those 3 particular I just received this, by the way. Oh, here it is. Steps to creating a blue community. I'm wondering if we shouldn't, we can put a motion on the floor. I just found it. Just found it. Okay, that would indicate all these 3 issues. Send an email to Blue Communities Canada to join their network of community activities. I gather that's number 1. Mm-hmm. And with it, number 2 would be community members working on promoting the water. Commons are setting up water watch committees across the country. That would be number 2. And I gather number 3 is using the information provided in this guide and so on and so forth. The bottom line is water is becoming and will become probably the next oil. After all, I'm concerned. And a large chunk of North Americans' fresh water, which every creature on Earth must have, is sitting here in Canada and between the borderline. We have to find a way to protect it, and I agree with you. I know people who have greenhouses, large greenhouses in this area. I know people who have large greenhouses in St. Catharines. And do you know where they come and get their water from? Here in Port Colborne. When they run out of rainwater, they come to Port Colborne with trucks to get their clean water, and they get Aquaman and so on and so forth to bring water up to them until they can get more water. Port Colborne's water is better at the tap than you can get anywhere else. There's no reason to have bottled water unless you're sitting out in the middle of a soccer field and you need something to drink. I mean, that's a different situation. Okay? But some people just think that tap water is no good. Tap water is probably the best water we have. I'll leave it at that, but I want those 3 recommendations, and I want to be able to turn our community into a blue water community.
Thank you, Councillor. First off, do I have a seconder to that recommendation, please? Councillor Desmarais. Do you have any further comments or questions? Councillor Bodner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I give A for enthusiasm and having, some very good facts for us. And, I don't think we can argue with a number of the different things. I guess one of the things I have a problem with, and I don't know whether it's in Councillor Doucette's resolution that he's bringing forward, but certainly, the region and the cities are looking at what to do with water and wastewater, whether we're going to, do it as one group, 2 groups, privatize it. I think that all should be left on the table. I don't think that discussion has been, totally had. I'm not sure I heard that I heard certainly in your presentation, but I don't know whether Councillor Doucette's, incorporated that in his request. It didn't sound like it, but I just, I would vote against it if it was in there just on that, because I want to have that discussion at some point. A lot of good points. Absolutely. I think we've all seen documentaries on water and water use and what could happen without it. As you alluded to in the States, where there's, probably the next war is going to be fought over water. It's going to be more valuable than oil for sure. So I just don't want this to be a blanket thing that we incorporate everything and maybe we don't live up to those expectations. So just trying to figure out where this all fits.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Councillor Steele and Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Your Worship. I won't say exactly what Councillor Bodner stated with regards to our speaker. She was outstanding, but I feel that maybe this should come back to us at our next meeting, because we are in the middle of our discussions at the regional level of what the future of how our system is going to work. The other question I have is on which was item 1 that Councillor Doucette brought forward, says ban the sale of water in all public facilities and at municipal events. Public facilities I have no problem with, but at municipal events, does that mean during canal days that we make sure our vendors don't sell bottled water? How do we police that? Then it goes further on how do we supply water to our guests that come to Port Colborne during that time, you know, what is the cost to the city to put, whether it be fountains or some type of water depots in the city, because, you know, they do sell a lot. Some people tend to bring their own, whether it be through the Brita system that I heard earlier, or they bring their own water bottles or whatever it may be through a tap. But I mean, those are things that we should know as a council before we make a decision. That, you know, it's easy to ban something, but how do we police it, and how do we substitute what's being done now to what these people are going to look for in the future? So I'd rather that come back from staff to us than just making it. As I say, I do agree with some of these things, but others I do have concerns about and questions. I'd like those answered by staff.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Butters, and then Councillor Demery.
Thank you. First of all, Robin, thank you for your presentation. They say out of the mouths of babes, and you're right on, babe. Perfect. I want to just draw your attention to page 10 of the handout, and up in the left-hand corner it says that this resolution was passed by London, Ontario Municipal Council in August 2008, along with a timeline for implementation and further directions for accompanying studies and budget reports. And it says to see the full municipal report, visit www blah blah blah. So I think that with any outstanding issues that the councillors have brought up, and rightly so, you know, we have to look at all different aspects. We can probably do a similar thing with those kinds of implementation and timeline, but I think that the bottom line is, do you or do you not embrace the idea that our water needs to be protected, and we can't afford to be waiting around for somebody else to do it. We live in a waterfront, a lakefront community. We know firsthand the impacts of what happens when this lake is bombarded with the pollutants that it has been. So in terms of like drinking water, and it's something like that every single creature on this earth needs. Whether you're human or animal, you need water to survive. If that's not at least a human right, I don't know what is. So I'm certainly prepared to support this young lady's position and a resolution put forward. And I think if we can attach some timelines, implementation to that, it may address some of the other councillors' concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Demery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, through you to Robin. Robin, thank you so much. You do make me feel better about the future. You really, truly do. And as to the resolution, selling water at events, I do agree that will cause a bit of a problem because we don't have an alternative to it. So I would say ban the sale of water, except at times when water is not available to the public, because we can't supply the water at things like canal days. That would be a very difficult thing to do. And as to privatization of water, wastewater, just remember when things become profit driven, we tend to lose control and quality, and that's one place where you don't want that. Education, healthcare, and water, you don't want those things to be profit driven. That's really all I have to say about it.
Great. Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Botter.
If this is dealing with bottled water, I think I'm going to declare a conflict as being a large seller of bottled water in a resort community that has less than good tasting water. So I think I'm going to just not get involved any further in this conversation. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any further comments or questions? Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Worship, and thanks to Councillor Butters with regards to these. What I'd like to see is that we actually have a resolution written that we can read, be brought forward to our next meeting. And if you want to add those timelines, I think you should. The London one here, I just read it through, and I don't really see an actual timeline of how they're going to implement, you know, how the banning will go on, but I'm sure it's in here somewhere. Yeah. So if we can maybe find some of those things out so that we actually have a path that we're going to follow that, you know, gets an end result that we can all agree in and helps this young lady move her project forward. So, you know, as opposed to just voting for it tonight, because I think there are certain things that may be different here and in other communities that maybe we want. So that's all I'd ask, is that it be brought forward next meeting.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Doucette.
I'm looking for a way to try to get this to go on this evening. And maybe one of the ways that we can do that is inside the resolution that I've just put out, that we place some kind of amendment that would allow staff to get back to us with the information before it can be enacted in some way, shape, or form. But we do it this evening. Now, if that's okay with Councillor Steele, I would like to do it this evening with the idea that they will come back to us on the 25th of June with timelines that we can accept or not accept, but at least discuss and then change. Now, I don't know how that would be written. I'm not one. And I looked at the Waterloo one, and I gather there's timelines in there, and I'm not sure exactly how that one works out. But the three main items, the fact of water being a human right, the fact of number 2, promote publicly owned and operated water infrastructure, which we already do. The third one is the only one that seems to have something to do with timelines, or at least how do we get it done so that it doesn't affect our events like Flavors, Canal Days, things of that nature. And I agree with Councillor Steele. I think that has to be worked out. But is there no way of putting that inside this motion so that we will discuss the timelines next week or at the next meeting, and we can go ahead with this? That's what I would like to see.
Great. Okay, thank you, Councillor. Robin?
I have just a couple comments on everything that's been said.
Sure.
How Councillor Steele was saying bottled water with the municipal events and the vendors. What we're trying to do is we're trying to, whenever your contract expires with the vendors, you just are promised to not renew that contract with bottled water. And as for the replacing it with something, I'm not trying to ban it in other stores. It will I can't stop bottled water from being sold in like Max Milk or other stores as well like that. And you need to proudly promote yourselves as environmentally aware and show people that you can use water fountains and you can bring your own reusable water from home. You don't need to buy a water bottle at this municipal event. You need to buy your own. And you need to have faith in your people that they will follow what you choose to lead. And I think you need to have trust that they will follow you, and if they choose not to, well, you can't force them to. You can't coddle, I guess, if that's the right kind of word.
Thank you, Robin. Well stated. Members of Council, further comments, questions? Councillor Doucette.
I think what she's trying to say is we lead by example.
Yeah.
That's what she's trying to say. Okay? And if we, as a group of leaders of this community, show the example, then I think you're going to see other people say, hey, maybe we should as well. If you can't lead by example, then we have a problem. And that's where I'm looking at this. So.
Go ahead, Robin.
There's, I've also found some trouble with this with other communities, and the Council of Canadians are willing to change the wording of one of the resolutions to commit to phasing the sale of bottled water out. And you don't do it all at once, because I understand how hard that is. You can't just stop it. You're committing to phasing out the sale of bottled water. So that can be changed.
Thank you, Robin. Members, any further questions or comments? Go ahead, Councillor Steele.
Thank you. I mean, I think we have some consensus around this table, just that I really haven't seen a resolution other than other communities. You know, I think we need those, and I think we need the 3 resolutions worded for the city of Port Colborne with some timelines that have been brought up around this table. So, I mean, I think we can pass this in consensus tonight, you know, that we agree with the points. You know, you may not agree with 100% of the points, but you do agree with the general consensus of the points the young lady's making. But I want to see the wording. I'm not just going to carte blanche, because really I haven't seen any resolutions put on the table yet other than the 3 lines that are in the letter. I mean, you know, so Well, these are sample resolutions, so I mean, that's all I ask, is that we actually have the resolutions come back that are worded for the city of Port Colborne with some of the caveats that we've asked for tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Steele. May I suggest a few things to Council? First off, Robin, once again, you hit a home run. Great job, great presentation. When we've seen Robin down at the region, and I also actually watched her at the City of Niagara Falls Council meeting as well, there's no question that you come through with a lot of enthusiasm and passion for the issue, and I'm sure you're going to be very successful in doing what you're setting out to do. With that said, I know that here in our community we've been very well known to take things to the next level and be very unique with respect to different resolutions that we come forward with, especially when it comes to the environment. There's a lot of things that we're working on with both Councillor Butters and Councillor Bodner in their respective wards, and as well across the entire waterfront that we're trying to do with respect to quality, adding more quality to our lakefront. I think if you drive around Port Colborne anytime this past weekend with the warm weather, you can tell the reason why we're trying to pay more attention to our waterfront. And with that said, there's many priorities on top of the priorities that you have presented to us this evening that that we feel that we can go well beyond the call of duty with respect to what you're presenting, as well as many other initiatives that we have currently underway, many of which you're going to find out about when you're at the Great Lakes Mayors Conference in Quebec City. But with that said, and I agree with some of the comments that were made today, because this is big. This is not just a small resolution. Robin brings to us something that's cutting edge with respect to, as Barb said, our responsibility to take more of an appreciation, and therefore to prioritize the state of the situation with water across the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Basin. And I have to say that although the traditional may be convenient and the non-traditional not, well, we best work at it. Because at the end of the day, for example, when it comes to an event, if we have to work a bit harder to deal with this issue, then we do. And that's the bottom line. If we have to bring in different methods, other methods where people can fill up bottles versus buy bottles, then that's what we do, and we deal with those situations. Otherwise, those changes that would be better for us and better for future generations just wouldn't in fact be made available. So I think it's very important for us to consider that. But with respect to Councillor Steele's comments, I think it would be appropriate to accept the presentation, and of course with the resolution that Councillor Doucette's bringing forward, to refer it back to community services as well as operations staff for a report. And I say that for two reasons. I would love to pass these resolutions this evening. I just would, because Robin, I know you came down here from Kingston, far away, and you did such a great presentation. But I'd like to be I'd like to take it a few steps further. Not just what Robin presents, but with a lot of the other things that we're working on, to then dovetail into the situation or into the process of what Councillor Bodner has referred to with respect to the region, because ultimately I want that region of Niagara support too. Ultimately, that's 12 municipalities across the entire region, and of course the region itself. So I think it may in fact be appropriate, Councillor Doucette, if it's your pleasure, to refer this back to staff for the next meeting, and with that we can have a report back that would identify some of the solutions that we can attach to Robin's recommendations and resolutions, but as well a step further with respect to some of the other issues that we're dealing with presently within the city of Port Colborne. Councillor Doucette.
My only concern is the timelines, number one. Okay, I don't want to be dealing with this next January. I want to be dealing with it as quickly as possible. That's number one. Number two, I thought I'd seen this when I went through her presentation, and I couldn't find it, so I thought I'd ask the clerk to give me her copy, and then I still couldn't find it, and then all of a sudden in playing with this, there are 3 resolutions essentially in this package, okay? One of them is the one that recognizes water as a human right. And that particular resolution, if you take a good look at it, has nothing to do with selling bottles or selling anything. It strictly indicates that, it is very important that we as a city identify water as a human right. Every human being, every creature has the right to water, period. I don't know, that would be a very simple fix probably this evening. The bottled water one seems to be the crucial one, banning of it. The other one is strictly promoting publicly owned and operated water and wastewater infrastructure. I've taken a look at that, and that may need to. I don't mind waiting 2 weeks. I mean, you would probably rather we have it done, but if it'll help, we can wait 2 weeks. But I want it in my hands in 2 weeks. I don't want it next January. I don't want it in December next year. I want it as soon as possible. And that may put pressure on staff, and I don't want to do that as well. So that's the other issue I have here. For them to do a good examination of this and to give us a good idea of what they feel, it may take longer than 2 weeks. I don't know. I think we may need staff's opinion on that one.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Mr. Hanson, can we look at the first meeting in July?
We'll do our best, Mr. Mayor. I'm not assuming it's my report, but we'll get everybody together to do that.
Mr. Howe?
Worship, Council's current bylaw requires reports to be finished this week. This needs to have some review, and I also would want to really ask the environmental for their input, not necessarily a committee meeting, but environmental committee, so that you've got full information. If anything, Your Worship, if we can suggest, if this is approved in principle, it at least gives everybody direction that that's where you're going. If it's in principle, and the clerk could just whisper in my ear that that's probably that would get it on the record, that this council supports all those things that have just been brought forward, subject to some details that we can work out, and we'll bring them as quickly as we can. You may get a report with the last two issues. The bottled water thing, dealing with 300,000 people at Canal Days, logistically may be an issue. We've got to look at some of the ways that we can try to handle that. So, if I may, Mr. Mayor, if I can suggest that we will get it back to you within at least the last two issues, excluding the water bottles, get it back to you over the next 2 weeks to the first meeting in July. The water bottles themselves, we want to discuss ways that we can perhaps supply water if we have to. That's going to be one of the discussions that's going to have in respect of the ban at municipal events. And you know what we've got with flavors and sports events and Canal Days, and these are all municipal sponsored stuff, and all these vendors, unfortunately, not our contracts, but they're here and we permit them to come here to service those 300,000 people. That's a lot to do to say no water. The issue, Your Worship, if we could, if I can suggest that it get approved in principle, send it back to staff, we'll come back immediately as soon as we can for perhaps the first meeting in July on the 1-2 issues, and the plastic bottles perhaps maybe before July is out, but it may be even in August if we can.
Thank you, Mr. Howe. Councillor Doucette?
I like the idea of accepting it in principle, and that way there Robin can go back home saying she did it tonight. But what's important here is that we get our own act together. We make sure that we do this. So timelines for me are very important. If what I'm being told is the first two can probably be dealt with by sometime in July, I have no problem with that. The next one, the banning of the bottles, I don't want it to go too long. Yes, we need to make sure that we have our act together on the logistics of that, especially on our events. I mean, you're right. 300 to 500,000 people walking in here in 4 days, we've got to find a way to get them water and get them whatever they need. I have no problem with that one. But let's stick to timelines, and let's make sure that those timelines are doable. That's the only way I can put it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Desmarais?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would be in support of letting staff have this and working through every issue and taking as long as they absolutely need to take it, so that we do it once, we do it right, and it's complete all in one fell swoop. But for tonight, I would like to pass the resolution that water is a human right. That would be a good place to start, and knowing and keep Robin, resolve to also keep Robin in the loop with where we're at with things, so that she can take that forward to other communities in the future. But seriously, if we're going to do this, let's do it right and take the time needed to properly investigate it all, so that when we implement it, we do it in the best way possible and it becomes a permanent fixture.
Thank you, Councillor. So may I suggest, Councillor Doucette, that we have three parts of the resolution. One is to accept the presentation. Secondly is to, in principle, accept the three priorities that Robin has outlined. And thirdly, to refer back to staff for, we're hoping, the first meeting back in July.
I have no problems on any of those three issues. Again, my concern is staff is going to have to really work on something when they're in the middle of something else. Let's go that route. Let's do that. Okay. I have no problems. I think we should accept this in principle. Agree that we should accept her presentation. She did an excellent job. She made me think of a lot of the young ones that I used to teach when they used to talk and they used to get hung up on something. You did an excellent job at recatching yourself and going for it. Excellent, excellent job. You know, I can just think of no better presentation to accept here. And then we'll go from there. But we need to make sure that we deal with this. That's my only concern.
Thank you. And to the seconder? The seconder? That was it. Who was the seconder? Councillor Desmarais. That's fine? That's fine. Okay. With any further questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried unanimously. Robin, well done. Great job. Well done. I think Mayor Garrison's got his hands full with the next mayor of Kingston. With that, members, we'll now move on to our second delegation this evening. We have Mr. Mike Hopper and Mr. Gary Talassi on behalf of the Port Colborne Downtown BIA regarding parking in the downtown area. Mr. Hopper, welcome.
Thank you. Mayor Badaway, members of council, city staff and public, appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight on behalf of the BIA. Way back, I think it's earlier this year, it came to the BIA's attention that the city council was considering putting pay and display meters in, and it actually took the BIA by surprise, and we felt that we needed to investigate this issue a little further before that recommendation was implemented by City Council. The BIA decided to form a parking committee to review the issue of parking in downtown Port Colborne and asked me to chair the committee. The terms of reference for the parking committee was as follows: to provide a forum for members of the BIA to air issues and concerns regarding the parking in downtown, and to develop recommendations for the BIA Board of Directors to consider, to provide a forum for discussion of parking issues related to the CIP, and to consult with the BIA Board representative on the CIP committee, and to undertake research on parking regarding the experience of other communities of comparable size to the City of Port Colborne. The membership of the Parking Committee should be at least one board member of the BIA who will act as a chair, and other members of the larger BIA membership that the board deemed to be helpful. March of this year, I sent out an email to all the downtown merchants. And this is basically the context. As a BIA, we continually try to find ways to encourage tourists to visit and shop in our town, and to encourage our local community to spend the disposable income in our town rather than shopping in the big box stores and shopping malls. This is an issue faced by many small towns and is presently top of mind with many BIAs across Ontario. We have to create a pleasant, relaxing, and welcoming and convenient shopping experience for our customers. Although most of this is at our discretion once they enter into our business, the one area that is out of our control is parking. It is very clear that the vast majority of downtown retail businesses would like to see all parking meters removed and a free 2-hour parking limit offered. We even have our mayor on record supporting free parking. He is aware in economic depressed times, one needs to protect your downtown merchants who pay the commercial property tax and create employment. This will allow the customers to relax as they shop, eat, bank, get their hair done, etc., without worrying about the parking meters. There are two main reasons why parking meters are installed. One is to generate revenue. Well, we know it's revenue neutral in this city. And the second is to ensure traffic flow in busy areas. Wow, I wish we had that problem. I have been asked to chair the committee and to make recommendations of BIA that can be presented to City Council in the near future. If any BIA member would like to join us on this parking committee, please advise me. To help this process move forward, we need to understand all the options available when the meters are removed. Mainly, where are our staff and tenants going to park? Where are the city employees going to park? We also have to recommend how this free parking for our customers will be monitored and managed. I would ask each business to please respond to me with the following information, and we requested that they allowed us to know how many parking spots they needed for their staff, for their tenants, during peak times, which was July and August, and during the balance of the year. We will then try and identify our requirements for the city so that we can work together to accommodate our staff and tenants along with our customers who will ultimately pay our bills. So that went out to all the BIA members. We sent a second email out in April, again requesting that they come back to us with any concerns, any issues, any suggestions that they might have. We basically received 3 letters back with some concerns. One of them, the lady ended up on our committee, and when she talked through it, realized the issue wasn't what she thought it was going to be. We've addressed each of the 3, and we've moved on, and our committee finally put a recommendation together to the BIA board on May the 9th. I believe it's in your packages, but I would like just to read it, if I may, Your Honor. Recommendations on proposed changes to parking options in downtown Port Colborne. This proposal is the basis of our recommendation intended to allow the BIA Board of Directors to make an informed decision on a solidified presentation to Council. The background: the City of Port Colborne has proposed removing all current parking meters in the downtown core and replacing them with pay and display machines. After extensive investigation, discussion, and deliberation, the BIA members voted against pay and display as a solution. While this solution is administratively advantageous to many city departments, the inconvenience of accessing pay and display machines on downtown streets is neither resident nor visitor friendly and would have adverse effects on the already economically challenged merchants and continue to encourage alienation of tourists to the downtown business core. Our recommendation to the BIA board was as follows. For a 1-year trial period, the city should create an environment of free 2-hour parking. During this trial period, the parking meters would not be removed, but have the heads bagged with complimentary 2-hour parking, compliments to the city and the BIA logo printed on them. This would then eliminate the cost to the city of removing the meters at this time during the test, and also the installation of new signage stating that they had been removed. Time limitations should be a consistent 2-hour free parking, with the exception of busy corners, and our committee recommended that there should be on each corner a short of 15-minute parking limit on each side of each block, and this will keep these areas accessible to allow residents to conveniently execute shorter errands in town. To accommodate downtown employers and tenants, we suggest a review of the locations of current free parking lots and potential locations for additional free parking lots that may be needed to ensure a reasonable alternative is available to store staff, tenants, city staff, and visitors staying longer than the 2 hours. the enforcement, the City of Port Colborne will continue its current responsibility of parking enforcement, as this is included in the resident and business tax benefits. Stringent enforcement of prohibited areas, i.e. handicap parking areas and fire routes, etc. Enforce other areas by complaint only, with periodic pursuit to ensure that there is a visual threat of enforcement and discourage frequent violations. Extra checks may be on holidays and summer weekends. Merchants will self-monitor and police themselves and their visitors ensure traffic flow with the city enforcement as backup. Merchants and downtown owners will have to educate staff and tenants that these are not long-term parking areas and the location of free long-term parking alternatives for them. Review of the bylaws will be necessary to accommodate increased parking fees once tickets are ultimately awarded to discourage frequent violators. In small towns and cities like ours, a trip to downtown often takes no more than a few minutes. Many trips are made on impulse, and several trips are made throughout the day. With free parking available, the convenience should increase local visits and encourage people to spend more time downtown buying local. It is our intent as a committee to continue to research to understand the exact details of the needs of the downtown merchants, employees, and tenants. Then we will provide the board with an expanded and more detailed plan to meet their needs. This was presented to the BIA board and a motion was put on the floor and endorsed by all members of the committee of the BIA. And I believe the motion is in your package. So it is our request from the BIA that the Mayor and City Council will endorse what the BIA is looking for and allow a free trial for 1 year of free 2-hour parking. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hopper. Members of Council, do you have any questions or comments? Councillor Bodner, then Councillor Steele, then Kenny.
I'm just trying to do the math on this, and maybe it eludes me. I never was that great at math, but so the BIA is willing to partner with the City of Port Colborne. Certainly say it on the bags that are on the meters. And as you mentioned yourself, the parking meter money kind of offsets the parking enforcement. Is the BIA willing to pay half of the cost of the parking enforcement in your partnership with the for the lost money of the meter? Did I hear that in your presentation?
I believe what we'd said that right now it's revenue neutral, but it would only be enforced by complaint, so that if there was a frequent offender, our position would be initially that we would, maybe I should back up, 80% of the offenders are going to be our own store staff, merchants and tenants, from what I have ascertained from talking to a lot of the BIA organizations across Ontario. We believe on those situations, we know who the offenders are. We will put a friendly warning on their windshield that, that this is free parking for our customers, not for them, that there is long-term parking available. And that is why we're asking that the fines be increased, because the fines have been increased in the city for 15 years or 17 years. It's a $10 fine, which if paid within 48 hours, I believe, is $8. It's a slap on the wrist. We would like to see frequent offenders, which would most likely be staff and tenants, be fined with a $20 or $30 fine. If my staff get paid $10.25 an hour and they get a fine once every week, it's most likely pretty cheap parking. They've lost an hour's salary. If they're getting $20 or $30 fines, I don't think they're going to do it very often. So what we're saying is we're not expecting the bylaw officer to go out and patrol the streets. We're saying by complaint, as if there was any other bylaw that has been broken. And we would ask that the bylaw officer, that there's been a car now for the last 4 days parking in a spot. We've asked them to go into the long-term parking. They need to be ticketed. Outside of that, we're saying that because of the taxes that are paid by the merchants, some of that does go towards enforcement, that should cover when the bylaw officer periodically goes out to show that there is some enforcement. They need to have a presence. We've talked to other BIAs, and they sometimes go out the May 2-4 weekend and do a little enforcement, and maybe once or twice during the summer just to show that there is going to be some enforcement. But we believe that most of the enforcement will all be done by complaint, and the complaint will be coming from the merchants themselves. As a BIA, our belief is that if we have a tourist in this town spending money and they're in front of a meter for 3 hours, a bag meter for 3 hours, nobody's going to complain because they're in town spending money. The only complaint we have is if it's our own people blocking a spot that is meant for either a resident that's coming downtown to spend money or a tourist that is coming in to spend money. Those are the spots for them. They're not for tenants, they're not for employees, they're not for city staff. They're there for our guests coming to town. So we're not asking for enforcement. If somebody's there for 2 hours and 10 minutes, they're in town spending money, God bless them. You know, those are the people we want in town. There was a suggestion that if we do have long-term violators, I mean, you've had this in the past where a friendly note is put on the windshield that says, there is a bylaw, we appreciate you coming in town shopping. If you visit our town, please use our long-term facility next time. We don't want to chase our tourists out of town. Every time somebody gets a ticket, they're there to spend money. I'm sure they don't come back again. I hear comments continually that people won't shop in Welland anymore unless they're going to the malls because they get a ticket the minute they're 5 minutes over the meter. So the cost is, the BIA is not agreeing to cover the cost of the enforcement because we believe the enforcement is covered in our tax base. The enforcement should be done by complaint only, and hopefully we as a BIA will manage our own staff and our own tenants. The word in my store is that customer is paying your salary, and if you're in their spot, you're out of a job. And I think most merchants feel exactly the same way.
Thank you, Mr. Hopper. Councillor?
I won't belabor the point. I mean, I certainly want the businesses downtown to be successful. I'm a small businessman myself. I understand the concept of getting people to your door and everything like that. I'm just trying to get the math to work, and you know, we either will, and staff can correct me, we'll either lay off staff, not sign contracts with parking meter enforcement people. Anyways, I think there's a little more to work out yet. Does the concept work? I don't know, so I'll certainly be open to further discussion. I was just trying to see what we do with not bringing that much money in and still having staff on, because you know, I think we still got them there unless we lay them off or not sign a contract with a company. So there is, you know, not money coming in and people to pay. So I was just trying to get that whole concept. If it can be worked out, fine, and I think that's something to discuss at a future meeting, but I was just trying to get your thoughts on it. So.
Thank you, Councillor Bud. If I may, members of council, if we can just hold off to questions, reserve our comments, because the presentation that we've asked the BIA to come out and make is going to contribute to the report that we're expecting from staff to come back, I'm assuming at the next meeting or a meeting after that. Mr.
End of this month, Mr. Mayor, that's the plan.
Pardon me?
By the end of this month, the next council meeting.
Right. So what the BIA is essentially doing here is giving their thoughts as we had asked for with respect to parking downtown, and then that's going to be injected into the report, and then of course council will then have enough time, or have time then, or an opportunity then, to debate and or ask further questions of both staff and the BIA. So I have Councillor Desmarais, I'm sorry, Councillor Steele, Councillor Kenny, Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple questions here. Under your first point, Mr. Hopper, you had for a one-year trial period. A trial period for what?
Bagged meters.
No, I understand all that, but what are you looking at getting after a year? What information?
If it's successful, as we believe it will be, then we're hoping that the council will agree to remove the meters permanently. We didn't want to put the council in a position of an expense of removing the meters until we can prove that this is a successful way for the town to operate.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Through you to staff. Staff, with regards to the way our bylaw enforcement is paid now, do the meters help offset costs to that person going throughout the whole community as opposed to just the downtown core?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Steele, that's absolutely correct. The revenue we get from tickets and the meters pay for our contract company to pursue parking not only the downtown core but throughout the entire city.
Correct. I think that answers Councillor Bodner's question. I do appreciate the work that the BIA has done. Unfortunately, I think they've really missed the boat here. What we talked about when we put it back in their laps.
Councillor, you can just ask questions. We can have those comments in debate when the report comes back.
Oh no, I think I have the right to ask or to make comments.
Well, actually, you don't.
Why?
Under the procedural bylaw, we have a presentation, and we're accepting questions to the presenter right now. We're not debating or giving an opinion on something that we haven't got on the table. We don't have a report on the table. We've asked the BIA to come back with their comments with respect to parking downtown. The time to debate and or give opinion on that will be when the report comes back to council. So if you just want to ask questions of the presenter.
Well, no, but my comment is based on what they were supposed to bring back to us. Really, this doesn't answer that question as far as I'm concerned. What information that we passed along to them at that time?
We're just asking,
that's my problem here.
We're just asking for questions of the presenter.
That's fine, Your Worship. If that's the way it's going to be, it better be that way every time one of these comes forward, and we're not bouncing back and forth by allowing it sometimes and not others.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Hopper. Mr. Hopper, I do have some concerns with this, and one of the questions that I have, though, is around any study, any information that was gathered to determine that parking is stopping the customers from coming into your stores. I'd like to know what percentage of customers you feel you're losing as a result of our parking meters. I know you said about Welland, but personally, I don't shop in downtown Welland because, first of all, there are not that many stores in close proximity to each other with things I want, so malls are easier. But just if you could answer for Port Colborne.
Part of the research we did was we contacted the Ontario BIA Association, and they sent out a letter to all the BIAs across Ontario. If you give me a minute, I will just read it to you. Parking continues to be an issue for all of our members. Many BIAs are in historical downtowns, locations that were created around horse and wagons and not around the increasing car traffic of today. Members' abuse is a constant issue. How do we stop our own members from parking in front of their own businesses? So, in the absence of a magic solution, we need to start building data and evidence that justifies free parking or extended parking and its benefits to the businesses within the BIA. If you or your municipality has such data, please share it with the Ontario BIA Association. I then had them send out an email to all the BIAs across Ontario requesting that the BIAs that have already approached this issue, why reinvent the wheel again? Would they supply some of that information to us? So I put further to email of September the 16th and 23rd. I'm on the board of both Crystal Beach and the City of Port Colborne's BIA. As in many small towns, we're trying to find ways to encourage our local residents to shop in town and to make it convenient to shop for guests who are out of town. I've been asked to chair the parking committee and look at recommendations for removal of parking meters in the downtown Port Colborne. I would appreciate hearing from any of the members who have removed their meters for free parking. What has the fallout been? Has it been positive or negative? How have you managed not having business staff and tenants using the free spots meant for guests and customers? How long do you allow free parking? Do you have the same free time all over, or do you have lower limits in front of banks, etc., where you want traffic flow? Do offenders get tickets or warning? Who enforces the time allowed? Is it by complaint, or do you have parking maids? What fines are levied, if any? There are a lot of small towns like ours that have removed their meters for 2-hour free parking. I would ask you to share your success and horror stories with us so that we can move forward to present a recommendation to our town council. I did get a response back from a lot of BIAs, and more BIAs are the towns removing the meters. They realize that the meters now because we are fighting the big box stores, the shopping malls, that we need to do anything we can to encourage people to come in. It was funny because when I was on the committee, I went up to Huntsville for a week, and I walked into my competitor, the Nutty Chocolatier, and she said, "Oh, we've just put a recommendation to council, and the council is removing all the meters up here." Now, that's a busy town, and they gave me a copy of the resolution that the council had passed. They allowed the BIA the option of managing it themselves, but they said if they didn't want to manage the issue themselves, then they would take it over May the 14th. So May the 14th of this year, they got rid of the meters. We've talked to places like Fort Erie, the councillors in Fort Erie, where they don't have the meters, in Ridgeway, Dunville. All the small towns have been getting rid of the meters to encourage people to come into town and have the convenience of shopping. You need meters in places like Niagara Falls, Niagara-on-the-Lake, St. Catharines, where you do have a problem with traffic flow. But where we don't have a problem, the idea is to make it convenient for people to stay and shop and not just keep looking at watches and saying, I wonder if I have to go and put more money. To hell with it, I'm just going to get in my car and go home. You know, I'm leaving town because I don't want to walk all the way back to the other side of town to finish my shopping. You know, and as far as the question of, you know, the funding, you know, our belief is that there are areas that could be used to fund this that I don't believe are being used. For example, wheelchair accessible parking, I think the minimum fine now is $325 up to $1,000. How often do we actually check to see if that license matches the plate? How many people have their mother's or their aunt's wheelchair sticker in the window and they get out of that car and I see them with their running shoes running downtown? You know, those are the people that should be penalized, not the people that are coming into town to spend the money in our town. We want to welcome them. We want to make them feel like guests, not like criminals, and that's what we're doing. Those are the places, you know, let's enforce fire routes, people's driveways, you know, corners of streets, wheelchair accessible. Those are the areas that we should be levying high fines and getting the revenue to fund some of this, not the guy that comes in or the lady that comes in to spend money in our town, and, you know, we're chasing them out.
Thank you, Mr. Hopper. Councillor?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hopper, for that answer. I understand totally what you're saying, but what you've said to me is that this is a BIA-led initiative, but there's not actually been any evidence that parking is causing a problem here in Port Colborne. And that's what I was asking. Do we have any evidence that shows parking is causing a problem with shopping in Port Colborne? That's what I want to know.
Mr. Hopper?
I believe the problem is every time somebody gets a ticket, when you look at the look on their face when they've got a ticket, that's the problem. We don't have a problem with parking. The issue right now, we can have store owners that can go out and put a quarter in the meter, and at the end of the day, they've parked in front of their store, and it's costing $2 to park there the whole day, and they've taken a spot that's meant for one of our customers. You know, that isn't doing us any good. If we could have the ability to have the free parking, but then to penalize those people, you know, I think the meters aren't working for the right reason. You can stay the whole day downtown for $2. Oh, Gary, do you want to interject? Yeah.
I just want to say that it's easier sitting out there than standing up here. I don't believe we have a study that shows the results, but we have lots of anecdotal evidence from lots of business owners in the downtown area who can talk to the issue of parking and how it's affecting their businesses.
Councillor?
Thank you. That's what I was looking for.
If I can add to that, and this is aside from this, before this ever hit the table or the BIA, I personally, outside of the BIA, had gone around to approximately 50 businesses in the downtown and asked them for their thoughts on getting rid of the meters. And I didn't even know the pay and display was going to be put on the table at that time. I just wanted to get a feeling because I didn't see any of my customers getting a ticket, but I saw lots of other people getting tickets, and I saw the look on their face. And I thought, well, maybe this is something that we need to start doing, is to find a way to avoid chasing the customers away that are coming into town to spend money. and I had, say, approximately 50 signatures on a petition that all said that they would love to see 2-hour free parking. But that was something I did on my own initiative. It had nothing to do with the BIA.
Thank you. Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have a question of the presenter, but I just wanted to ask Mr. Sunez. Mr. Sunez, when an individual comes in with a $10 ticket and pays that ticket immediately, that ticket is no longer $10. Okay. Mr. Aquilino, what does that ticket reduce to?
Mr. Aquilino.
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Kenny, if it's paid before the expired time frame, $8 a ticket gets reduced to.
Councillor.
Thank you. So it's no longer a $10 ticket, it's an $8 ticket. So, and then I noticed in your report that you gave us on your recommendation, it says that it was a unanimous support of the board. The board, which are 6 members, I believe, are they not? Or 6 or 7? Okay, they are the only ones that get to vote. Your other members of the BIA do not get a vote.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Schlossie or Mr. Hoppe?
On the motion that was on the floor, only the board can vote as city council on any motion that's put on the floor.
Correct.
Any member of the BIA within the downtown can join any of the meetings, and they will have an opportunity for their input and their discussion. But when it comes to voting on a motion, only the board members can vote on it.
That's what I want to know. So,
Councillor?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I just want to say, so if there were, so just say there were 10 other business owners that attended that meeting that night, and they were all against it, but the board was for it, would the motion pass? Because the board, the 6 business members, or 8 business members that were there, were board members, and they decided that was a great idea. Is that motion then passed?
Well,
despite other business owners' feelings one way or the other.
Thank you, Councillor. Gentlemen?
The 8 board members would not vote in favor if there were 10 members there, if all the other members who were non-board members were opposed to the motion. It'd be like saying city council voted in favor of a motion when half of your residents were here opposed to the motion.
To us.
Well,
they don't like us, but
there's no question that there are certain individuals in the BIA who do not want to see this motion or this be implemented.
Right. So there are
but it's that way all the time, and I can assure you that it's a very, very small minority of the membership of the BIA.
If I could add on to that, as I'd mentioned in my presentation, we sent out 2 emails, the committee sent out 2 emails to every business and asked them for their input, any suggestions, any issues, any problems. Out of all the membership, we only got 3 back. One of them basically was a suggestion that we leave the meters on West Street, but the merchants pay the quarters when they come in. You know, they bring their ticket in, and then we would reimburse them, but that didn't eliminate the problem of them staying longer and overstaying the meter. There was a member on our committee that when she sat on the committee and understood the recommendations, she was completely for it, not against it. And there was one gentleman that had made some suggestions that, you know, that he wasn't in favor of it, but on Friday we should have better signage saying there's free parking on a Friday for the market, which seemed to contradict why you would want more signage for free parking on a Friday, but you wouldn't want free parking during the rest of the week. So out of the whole BIA membership, with 2 letters requesting their input, positive, negative, we didn't mind, we only had 3 people, and out of that there's only 1 basic complaint in writing that we have responded back to these people and have, you know, told them of, you know, what that has been discussed at the committee meeting, and we've addressed their issues.
Okay. Thank you. Just one more question. I just want to know how many of the business owners report when there's a meter outside their business that is not working, report that to the city, because there are several that you can go downtown and somebody's jammed, and it could be purposely, jammed coins in there so that you don't have to pay. So then that person could say, stay there and park all day, because they're not going to get a ticket because the meter's flashing, it's out of order. Just like the one on West Street that's been out of order, I'm going to say, at least 2 weeks.
Thank you.
I don't believe it's the merchants' job to actually go
But why
monitor
wouldn't
the
you?
meters.
Why wouldn't you? Because you don't want it.
Thank you. Mr. Hubbard.
We, you know, I would have thought that city staff would know if, from my understanding, they hire people to walk around and give tickets, that those people would find the meters that weren't working while they were walking around town and would report it back to the city staff. You know, I don't go out and check the pay and display meter.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Butters? Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. I just have a couple of questions. When you sent out the email to all the businesses, and you said you got 3 responses, could you tell me how many businesses were sent the email? Like, how many members would you have in the BIA? Would there be?
I think there's approximately 65 members now.
65
approximately.
members? So are you telling me 62 people didn't have an opinion one way or another, and only 3
Either that or they were
did?
aware. I think the membership is more around 100 in the
Okay.
BIA.
So,
just to clarify,
could I
folks,
understand?
if I can just clarify, is it understood that of all the emails you sent out, only 3 responded, or only 3 responded negatively?
Only 3 responded negatively.
Okay, so out of all the emails you sent out, you got 3 what you would call negative. So then how many did you receive that were in a positive vein? Thank you.
I didn't receive any, but I can tell you that part of the email was to ask them what their needs were for parking, and I only got 7 responses. So again, people tend to take things for granted. They don't. We've actually broken the town up into 4, and we've walking door to door asking what their needs are for their staff to make sure that we do understand it, because we don't want this to be passed and then find that we have 214 free parking spots, but actually we need 280. I only got, say, responses that from 7 people, and most of the 7, believe it or not, all but 1, emailed me back to say, we don't need any parking, we've got our own parking, thanks very much. We did get some responses saying this is a great initiative, but I mean, it was, I think most people, if they come to, I always say it's the vocal minority and the silent majority, and most people, as you know, don't get involved, they just go along with the flow. If you go and talk to them personally, you do get a positive response from them, but that's...
Thank you, Mr. Harper. Thank you, Councillor. Any further comments or questions? If I can have a motion to receive the presentation, please. Councillor Butters, Councillor Steele. Any questions or comments further to that? Mr. Howe?
Your Worship, I have one question. I just need to clarify, if I may, Your Worship, because we're preparing the report. When the City Hall was built, there was a staff parking that was sufficient to cover all city staff plus extras, and it is restricted. But did I hear a couple times that you say that this parking downtown is being used by city staff? Did I hear that a couple times?
No. I believe what we want to do is to make sure that there is sufficient parking for tenants, merchants, retailers, owners, for any city staff that need to park outside of this. I mean, the idea is to make sure that there is enough long-term parking to accommodate anybody that might need it, rather than coming back later on and find there's not enough long-term parking for the needs.
Thank you, gentlemen.
So just to clarify, and just for our report, Your Worship, I want to make sure. So city staff parking, that isn't a problem. You're just interested in making sure that if it needs to be addressed, it can be addressed. Is that what I understand?
If it needs to be addressed, that's what we're asking, that it is addressed in the final requirements for long-term parking, which would be over the 2-hour parking limit.
Okay, Mr. Colossi, you had a comment to make?
Yeah, a couple of things. I understand why you didn't entertain Councillor Steele's comments, but certainly as a BIA, we'd be interested in hearing Mr. Steele's comments, because we were under the impression that what we were delivering tonight was what City Council was asking of us. And secondly, we're hoping that we'll have a look at the report that staff is going to present to City Council. I'm not sure that we'll be being provided the opportunity to provide input to it, but certainly we would rather not be in a position of where we find out about it on Monday and wish we'd been a delegation to speak to it. So, you know, I think we've tried to be partners in this process all along, and I hope we aren't going to be cut out of it right here at the end.
Mr. Howe?
Your Worship, currently the process for reports is nothing is released. It's standard practice. Nothing is released to the public until members of council get a chance to read it. That has been practice. If council has no objection, we can supply the report in draft, and very draft, ahead of time. It's just that we certainly do not want members of council to be blindsided with comments and complaints that is what's written in the report, and because it's really not fair to members of council. Hence the reason that it goes to council first, so that they don't end up getting shot with not knowing what's going on out there. And it's very important that if the report is supplied ahead of time, that it is a working report, a draft report, and is not made of stone and could be changed at the working stage.
Thank you, Mr. Howe. If I may, and this is not different than what we go through every second week when we have a council meeting. There's a purpose of the protocols that we have in place for a council meeting, and that is that reports are prepared by staff. They're brought out to members of council as well as members of the public, and you have every opportunity to be at that meeting as a delegation to address that report. If in fact a member of council hears from the delegation that there's a need to defer the report or send it back to staff for anything that you may be bringing forward as a presentation, or even some concerns that council may in fact have as a member of council, then a member of council or even the delegation has every right to bring forward a deferral or referral recommendation to refer it for the following 2 weeks, so you can bring it back to the BIA, or members of council can bring it back to the BIA and or get some clarification from members of staff. So this isn't new. This is something that we've been abiding by for some time now. The key, however, is that yourself, as members of the BIA, gets a hold of the copy, as members of council do at the same time, the week prior to the council meeting. The second part of that is to read the report and to understand the report, as members of council do. And then thirdly, come out as a delegation and articulate the concerns as a member of council would that you may in fact have. But I want to be very clear. There's no reason why a delegation, as a member of council, can ask for a referral or deferral based on questions or clarification that you in fact may have.
I just find that in the past, by the time we know about the report, it's too late to get on as a delegation unless we ask for special treatment by the council the night of the meeting. Maybe staff could comment on what the timelines are for that. I understand that we shouldn't get a report before council, but I also have found difficulty in the past becoming a delegation after the report's been made public. It's too late. So I heard Mr. Heil suggest that we might be given a copy of the report if it's understood that it's draft, and we would like to keep that distribution to a minimum. So I might ask that if you could make a copy of that report available to Mr. Hopper, as one copy to Mr. Hopper as chair of the parking committee, then that would suffice for our needs.
Madam Clerk, the reports are available on the Thursday part of the council meeting?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the present time,
But it's not changed yet.
yes, at the present time, agendas are made available on the Wednesday. However, there is a motion, a bylaw amendment on the agenda this evening to change that to the Thursday.
Okay.
And what's the delegation?
The delegation is the Friday.
It's Friday.
The delegation is the Thursday as well? Go ahead, Mr. Howe.
Through your worship, it is a problem, has always been a problem, is that when the reports are issued, that the agenda is issued in accordance with the bylaw, and they're required to let us know at noon, the day of the issue of the agenda, that they want to be on the agenda, but they don't have the copy report. Logistically, it is a problem, your worship.
So basically, you're giving us notice now that you want to be a delegation at the Monday meeting. Okay.
Some of your colleagues have a great idea. Just get on and then withdraw if you don't think you need to be there. It seems counterproductive to me, but if that's what you'd like us to do.
Okay. To the motion to accept the presentation, any further comments or questions? You're fine? Any further comments or questions? Okay. All in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. And I'm assuming that now staff is going to accept this as part of the report and move forward with including these comments in the report. The report will be out by the following meeting Thursday prior. And Madam Clerk, if you can make sure that these folks are on as a delegation. Okay. Members, we're all good? Okay, gentlemen, thank you. Appreciate the presentation. We have a request from a second delegation, members of council. I have a copy on your desk with respect to Ms. Mickey Main, who would also like to speak on this issue, and I would assume that the intent is to get her comments within the reporting of staff's report going back to council. So if I need leave of council first off. Councillor Doucette, Councillor Desmarais, any questions or comments to that? All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Mrs. Main?
Okay. Thank you very much for allowing me at short notice to come here this evening, and thank you very much for your report from the Parking Committee. Just a quick comment. When I read the email that came out about the Parking Committee, it really did seem as if it was the committee was to remove parking meters, and since I was not interested in removing parking meters, and from what I understand there are other people who feel the same, they may not have wanted to apply to that committee. But that's just a quick comment. My husband and I have 5 commercial units and 2 residential units in downtown Port Colborne. We do not own any parking spaces, therefore we must rely on what is provided for the city, by the city, for the use of our tenants, staff, and customers. We have seen proposals to eliminate parking meters many times throughout the years. I have paperwork on March 93, April 2000, January 2007, and now May 2012. In my opinion, on-street parking should be intended for short-term, high turnover. Off-street lots should be reserved for long-term free parking. And the only way to ensure that this system works is to have fair and consistent enforcement. I do not support recommendations 1 and 2 of the Downtown BIA Parking Committee. The first recommendation, recommendation 1, suggests free 2-hour parking for a 1-year trial period. These are my opinions on 2-hour parking, and these are my opinions based on many years downtown and a lot of experience, and experience with my neighbors as well. Free 2-hour parking is very difficult to enforce. And I know that Sherry Hansen came to the BIA meeting and told us all about enforcement of 2-hour parking, so I know she's going to tell you the same thing. It's time-consuming, takes twice as long, or maybe better than that, to enforce rather than parking meters, and it's costly as a result. Self-monitoring, as suggested by the Parking Committee, self-monitoring and only periodic and complaint-driven enforcement represents a reduction in service to the businesses. Increased parking fines for offenders will be a deterrent for customers. Fines will not pay for enforcement, and therefore this represents the additional cost to the taxpayer. Customers must move their vehicles after 2 hours or risk a fine. And you can't choose between who does and who does not get a ticket. You can't say, oh, that car belongs to a customer, they shouldn't have a ticket, that person isn't a customer, I don't know. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. Maybe they are a business owner, but maybe they're also a customer. You just can't say who does and who doesn't get a ticket. It doesn't work that way. Parking meters. Parking meters are an effective tool for enforcement. Meters are simple, scientific, non-judgmental, and universally understood. The current parking meter system we have in Port Colborne pays for itself without gouging the customer. We have inexpensive rates. The rates are 25 cents per hour. The meters accept nickels, dimes, and quarters. This is as close to free as you can get. If the customer needs more time, they simply put more money in the meter. They don't have to move their vehicle. If the meter expires and a ticket is issued, a fine is not costly, $10, and if you pay within 7 days, only $8. Parking meters with low rates and gentle enforcement is the best solution. If a trial period is recommended, please, not a year. Reduce the time to maybe 60 days with measurable benchmarks for decision making, including financial and effective enforcement. I just want to also say that I added in here is financial implications, and this is a 2011 numbers that I was given by the city treasurer. Parking meter collection in 2011 was $21,430. Parking fine collection was $8,750 for a total of $30,180. Also, I'd like it to be known that the parking fine collection, between 60 and 70% of that was expired meters, and that's from the numbers that I got from Sherry Hansen. Expenditures for enforcement, and that enforcement, by the way, yes, is for the entire city. So that means not just parking meters, not just free 2-hour parking that does exist now downtown in some areas, but everywhere, whether it be fire hydrants, handicapped accessibility, whatever. It's all $26,000. And I know there are other numbers as far as maintenance, banking, et cetera, but I didn't have those. But even so, I would say that probably, even though it does appear to be revenue neutral, it also is revenue generating because it pays for parking enforcement throughout the city. So the parking meters they pay for themselves, basically, and they aren't expensive. It's not a bad deal. The recommendation 2, which is in the report, not very much was asked or talked about that, but I'd like to talk about it because I do find this an extreme hardship. And that recommendation is to designate all corner parking spaces for 15-minute parking only. Businesses that require more time for their customers would be disadvantaged, really disadvantaged by this. And I want you to imagine what a corner is like and an intersection is like, and the fact that you're going to have corner parking spaces. There are 8 if you have a full intersection of parking. And I just took a quick look at the map, and I thought probably around, conservatively, about 48 on-street parking spaces would be affected. In other words, change from 2-hour to 15-minute. That would probably also be extremely confusing for customers. And corner businesses, I own a corner property, would probably be hit hardest. Big problem. And the other issue is, of course, enforcement. Customers must move their vehicles after 15 minutes or risk getting a fine. I would compel you, I'd ask you, please, keep the parking fair, simple, and consistent. The 15-minute spaces are not needed. Every space has an opportunity to be 15 minutes. Every parking meter, every 2-hour, every 1-hour space can be a 15-minute space if that's all you need. So it's reasonable to keep them. Actually, I agree with recommendation number 3. We should review current free parking lots. One of the things I mentioned earlier was how many times we've come back with this issue again and again and again. Parking meters, get rid of them, get rid of them, get rid of them. I don't think it's parking meters that's the problem. The problem is that there isn't enough parking and the parking isn't distributed where it's needed. For my part, additional parking is needed, particularly east of King Street, because we do not have any free parking lots. We've got some casual lots, the biker and hiker one over there by the canal, but we don't have any designated lots that are paved, that are well lit, et cetera, et cetera. So I would like that to be researched completely, because that's one of the things that we really do need. And perhaps if we had better positioned lots and more of them, this whole issue wouldn't be an issue. And I just want to briefly speak about the report from the city. And the city had the report about the pay and display machines. I can't even say it, excuse me. The proposals to double the charge for parking from 25 cents to 50 cents per hour, replace parking meters with pay and display machines, install pay and display machines in areas where meters have been removed due to vandalism, and to install pay and display machines in city parking lots, including Market Square and over in Humberstone and elsewhere. And then purchase 12 pay and display machines at a cost of $120,000. Now, clearly, as I understand, that the staff is recommending this in order to get income for the city, increase income levels. And by using pay and display machines on street parking, they feel that that's going to do it. Pay and display machines in parking lots, that's going to do it. They need more income. And I'm suggesting to you that if we have reasonable parking that we do now, it pays for itself what do we need the income for other than to pay for the pay and display machines at $120,000? I did the math, and I looked at the report, and the mechanical meters that need replacing that are listed on that report, you can see what I have here. It would cost $48,662 to replace every single mechanical meter that needed it. That's a far cry from $120,000 for pay and display machines. As a matter of fact, if you replaced every single parking meter that is downtown currently, even put new one in, it would be $64,008. So that's still a lot less than $120,000. As a matter of fact, if you purchase 17 single meters, it would be a little less than $10,000. That's 17 spaces only that it would provide. That's like, what I'm saying to you is one pay and display machine and 17 parking spaces. 12 double meters would be $10,000 or 24 spaces. The report is recommending putting pay and display machines, and the highest number of parking meters that it's going to replace are 14 only. And some of them are as few as 8 parking spaces that they would service. So a $10,000 pay and display machine would service 8 parking spaces under this report, under these recommendations. I'm not sure what kind of comment you would want to make on that or not, but I think that pay and display machines are really good. There's a reason for them, and I think they're there for a large number of parking spaces, for parking lots. I don't think they're very good for on-street parking, particularly in Port Colborne when you're talking about maybe 8 to 10 spaces per pay and display machine. The other issue, of course, is that even though you're going to remove all the parking meters and put the pay and display machine in, you've got to have a whole series of signs. And if you look right outside there at the pay and display machine, right outside of City Hall here, you'll see that there are 5 large green signs that talk about the pay and display machine and where you pay and so on. And those signs would have to be in front of businesses. And that lovely pay and display machine, I'm not sure who's the lucky business that gets that in front of their business, but it's honking. It's really big. So maybe it's your phrase, the big ugly? At any rate, I wanted to talk about the pay and display machines because the last time we came forward with a thing about parking meters and we had to have a trial period and everything, then it was decided that we would keep our parking meters. Unfortunately, we ended up with not 1 but 2 pay and display machines, one on West Street and one on Charlotte Street. And it's a very confusing pay and display machine. I know that I hear all the time. The signs are kind of crooked. People think it belongs, they're pointing to the cars that go into Market Square. Merchants tell me that all the time people are putting money in the pay and display and then putting tickets on their cars parked in Market Square. It's very, very confusing and not very customer friendly, as a matter of fact. So the merchants, the businesses, property owners were universally against pay and display machines for a whole variety of reasons. I'm giving you a financial reason here, but a whole variety of reasons. They really don't want their on-street parking to be serviced by pay and display machines. And I think that's very important to remember, that no matter what, we shouldn't do that to people. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to.
Thank you, Mrs. Bain. Members of Council, any questions or comments? Councillor Butters.
Only that we should include Mickey's presentation along to staff as well.
Thank you, Councillor. If I can have a motion to receive the presentation, please. Councillor Desmarais, Councillor Butters. No further questions or comments. Mickey, if you can leave a comment or your comments with staff, that would be great. And all in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Thank you. And thank you, Mickey. And to you folks, Gary and Mike, thank you as well for your presentation. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Sure.
How long will staff give the rest of the members of the BIA to submit their own personal report for consideration on this issue?
Well, based on Council's recommendation a few meetings ago to ask for input from the BIA, that's the time you had, and you'll have up until the preparation of the report, which is happening as we speak. So how much time do we have now left? 1 week?
Your Worship, the report will be finished by the end of this week.
I just hope you sense the frustration. You know, you asked the BIA to make a presentation.
Gary, if you want to come on up here to the podium, please.
I'm sure I know this isn't the first time this has happened, and frankly, it probably won't be the last, and I don't know how we can control it, but the BIA presented a meeting that was approved by the BIA Board of Directors at a meeting when any BIA members could be there and express their opinions. The other opinion you've heard tonight was that individual was present at the meeting, did get a chance to express her opinions, and so now that you have her own personal report, my question is, when can the rest of the BIA members submit their own personal report, because they didn't necessarily agree with everything that the BIA had to say? I mean, this is just...
I understand your frustration, Mr. Talassi, and when the report comes back to council, you can make those known. But to answer your question directly, if any member of the BIA, or not even a member of the BIA, it could be just simply a resident of Port Colborne, that has something to add to this discussion, they're more than welcome to pass it on to a councillor, myself, or a member of staff.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Steele?
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship, to Mr. Talassi, may I suggest that you did a mass emailing to your members. For those that did respond, get those in to Dan as part of your report. I mean, you have had, I mean, you've gone to your members. You've asked them for input. And as Mr. Hopper said tonight, a whole bunch were for it, 3 or 4 were against it. So get those into us. I mean, that's why we've given this whole amount of time for you guys to go out, make your members aware of what was going on so that they could get that information back to you. So you may want to do a last emailing to state that please get this in ASAP if you want to comment. I know you've had some, which is great. Get that into us. Like, I see
we thought our role was to gather the opinions of the business community and give you one that represented the majority of the opinions of the business community.
Okay.
I mean,
just on that,
go ahead.
Gary, I agree with you. All I'm saying is that you have done that, not like Mr. Hopper said, people tend not to comment, but you do have comments, and you guys, or Mr. Hopper's committee, felt that what he's giving us is the majority. That's fine. I understand all that, but get those in. All I'm saying is that you've had responses from your membership, maybe not as many as you want, however, that's what happens, but get them in. Get those emails and letters or however else they send them to you into Dan so he can attach it to that report. So we know, that's all. But we understand that not everybody's going to put a comment in. They don't. But some do. I know my business partner did put a comment in, but get them into us so that when that report comes, I mean, my frustration though, Gary, is that you're standing here tonight seemingly mad at us, but
no, I'm not mad at council at all.
I mean, this goes back a far distance in that I was hoping that your members would actually do what you just said and get involved in the process and answer your questions. Because when Mr. Hopper was appointed, we actually spoke. And he said, I'm going out and talking to these people, which he said he did. He also said that he was going to email these people. He did that. But unfortunately, not all your members want to respond. We know what happens. It's the same thing with committees that we sit on. You don't always get the same number of meetings. I look at our AGM for minor hockey. We had a quorum to meet of 20. We had exactly 20 people here out of 400 players. So really, that's almost 800 parents, if you look at it that way. So, it does happen where the minority does tend to respond, not the majority. But please get that information in to Dan so that he has it from those members. That's all I ask.
Thank you, Councillor Steele. And I do want to be clear, Gary, and I do understand your frustration. However, at the end of the day, everyone does have a right to bring their opinion forward, whether it be a business, whether it be another BIA member, or whether it be just simply a resident of Port Colborne. So, albeit I respect your comments and I understand your frustration, I still would encourage, as Councillor Steele said, anyone that has an opinion or anyone that wants to bring something in, by all means get it in here, because it'll come under full consideration within the report that is going to be presented to us.
So my submission has to come in and all the other submissions that went into this presentation from the BIA. That's what you're asking for?
Quite frankly, that's up to members of council. Me personally, I'm taking into consideration the recommendation of the BIA, no different than taking a recommendation from the council of the city of Port Colborne. Not every councilor, including the mayor, may agree with that recommendation, but when recommendation is complete, it's a recommendation of council.
And that's the way it gets presented to the region or the province or anywhere else, right? Unfortunately, that's not the way it works with our group.
Quite frankly, Mr. Tossy, that's your point.
Yeah.
That's the point you're making. Each member of council will have an opinion on that point, and that can be presented when the actual report is presented to council.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Heil.
Your Worship, if nobody has any objection, I would respectfully request council give us an extra week or two so we're not rushed, because it has to be this week and there's enough information and more continuing information. I would respectfully request council's permission, while I had planned and had been noted to be here at the end of June, to try to get it here to the end of, to the first meeting. It would be in July. I'm just bringing up my calendar right now. Today's the 11th. We had talked about the 25th. I would respectfully request that it would go to the July the 9th. I guess that would be the date. It just gives us a little extra time, Your Worship. We need some time here. There's too much going on.
Well, and I think Councillor Steele mentioned it earlier about getting it out. I don't think the time, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, the time for you is just gathering the information. I think ultimately the time that's needed is for the BIA to actually see the report.
Yep.
In draft form. I think Councillor Steele mentioned that before. So, and that's what I would suggest is and I'm sure the report's almost completed now. You're just waiting for these comments. And other comments that may be coming in from other BIA members or members of the community. So may I suggest that if you want to take that time, that we also take the time to pass on a draft report, as Mr. Thossley asked for, and get it to not only the BIA but any other member of the community that might want it. Is that fine? Is members of council okay with that? That's fine. Members of council? Okay. So that way we can have a report for you that much earlier. You can peruse that report, whether it's yourself, Gary, and the BIA, whether it's a member of the business community or just a resident of the community for that matter. And then, of course, you can discuss it with us when we actually entertain it here at the council meeting. Okay? That's fine? Great. Okay, thanks. Thank you, folks. Members of council, thank you. I think we're going to have quite a discussion on item number 1, I guess, eh? Members, we're now going to move on to the Regional Council's report. Councillor Barrick.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Always a pleasure to see the excitement at Port Colborne Council. So I have to state I was away the last City Council meeting because I was part of the region's Niagara Week, where I was able to sit down and speak with the Leader of the Opposition, Tim Hudak, as well as the Minister of Economic Development, Brad Duguid. Both officials, our group from Niagara, spoke primarily about economic development as is suitable for the Minister of Economic Development. And both were very open to hearing what we had to say, and I have to say there's a true dialogue there, and I suspect there will continue to be. They know the serious condition that Niagara is in comparative to the rest of Ontario. We've made that very clear, and we intend to follow up with not only the government but the opposition parties as well. So today, Mr. Mayor, I'd like just a couple of quick updates. There's been quite a lot going on with the region, but a couple points for the public. Environment Day is coming up on Saturday, June 16th, in which residents can drop off unwanted items for recycling and reuse. The Environment Day event will be held on Saturday, June 16th, 2012, in the back parking lot of the Welland Seaway Mall in Niagara Street. Environment Day provides an opportunity for Niagara residents to drop off unwanted items that can be recycled or reused. This year, the region is partnering with Canadian Diabetes Association and the Hope Center in an effort to reduce waste and help those in need. At this Environment Day event, residents can drop off free of charge the following items: household hazardous waste, reusable clothing, scrap metal, electronic equipment, blue and gray box recyclables, used inkjet cartridges and cell phones, batteries, eyeglasses, and tires. So again, that's this Saturday, June 16th at the Seaway Mall in Welland. The other note, Mr. Mayor, is the Niagara Prosperity Initiative has invested almost $1 million to fight poverty in Niagara. There's 21 agencies in Niagara selected to deliver 26 projects. In Port Colborne, that happens to be Port Cares, as the agency receiving 11% of the funding. Their project is With My Own Two Hands, and the description of that project is a community teaching garden beautified space will be constructed on a lot adjacent to the Reach Out Food Center. So we look forward to seeing that take place as well. Mr. Mayor, as you know, also, because you were also part of the Development Charges Task Force, along with myself, we've had several meetings leading up to our official meeting coming up at Council. What the task force has come up with, and then I'm jumping all over with topics, but development charges are important because they really have a lot of control over where development goes and how it takes place and how it happens. We've taken a hard look at development charges at the region, and here's some of the recommendations we've come up with. We've heard recently from the public at our last meeting. We're having another meeting to really take those comments into consideration before final approval. However, what we'd like to do as a region is adopt them as a uniform region-wide charge for water and wastewater, roads, and other services. Use specific development charges for industrial, hotel, motel, retail, office space, and institutional. Adopting a front-end financing agreement, and setting up a payment plan for nonprofit organizations. A couple other key points with development charges is that long-term care homes would be exempted from paying development charges, as well as affordable housing projects. And as we know, development charges can be quite expensive, tens of thousands of dollars in some cases. So this will have a big impact on growth in Niagara. Finally, we've begun our 2013 budget process with the Budget Review Committee of the Whole, subject to setting our budget guidance for 2013. So staff at the region can start, their departments can start to put their budgets together over the summer for us to consider in the fall. We've looked at setting a 0.8% increase, which works out to 0 after assessment growth. My intent, as noted at the region, was that we would stick to our guidance. However, if we can't, at least by setting this type of target, the public will be able to see why their regional taxes are going up. That will be made clear. Ideally, they won't, but if it comes forward, it will be made very clear as to why. So I'm happy to see that's the recommendation leading up to the meeting this Thursday. And finally, Mr. Mayor, just a quick friendly reminder, with the warmer weather and beach season coming forward, public health at the region would like residents and visitors to have a healthy experience, and a friendly reminder to check postings at the beach. We know that high levels of bacteria can cause some issues, health concerns with people that are swimming. So it's just a friendly reminder to check the status, which you can see online on the region's website.
Thank you, Councillor Barrick. Members of Council, any questions or comments to the regional councillor? With none? Thank you, David. Members of Council, we'll move on to you now. Councillor Zeddams, new business. Councillor Danch? Councillor Danch?
I guess it's time I got out of my chair and asked a couple questions. I've been sitting here too quiet. That's what the locals have been telling me. I'll go to Peter, I guess, first through you, Mr. Mayor. In regards to some of the grass in the marina, a couple of the boaters, of course, have their outdrive concerns. I just wonder if maybe you could fill us in on that one for starters. Thank you.
Mr. Sinez?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Councillor Dench, you're speaking of the weeds within the marina itself. We've had some emails back and forth with the ministry, and as of this week we were hoping to start doing some weed cutting. As you know, the ministry has always put a limitation on as to when we can start, and with regard to permit and that. Last fall we did get confirmation from one of the ladies at the ministry that they would provide a letter to us that we could start cutting earlier. So we're just waiting for that. As of last Thursday when I was down at the marina, we were checking on that. So I'm hoping I will find out. I'll check a little bit more tomorrow, and I'll send an email out to all of council just to let you know exactly what the schedule may be.
Thank you, Mr. Sinez.
They were cut today? No, they were cut today then.
Councilor?
Start today. Yep. Thank you. A couple other little things here. I guess it's BIA night tonight. Our Main Street BIA, we're going to try and get this up and running a little bit again. We've had some slowdowns. So as the councillor for Ward 3, I will be going door to door, talking to some of the business owners on Main Street. We haven't had a lot of communication over the last few months, so if you are a business owner on Main Street, recognize my face, and it'll be a friendly visit, and that will be coming up over the next week or so. I guess it's better to ask for forgiveness than it is permission. I guess we did some relocating of some plants on Main Street. We've planted the official flower of Port Colborne, the red geranium, in front of my business. Councillor B was advocate giving me a little moral support, and my wife was the one with the shovel. So if you're traveling down Main Street and you do see the red geranium in my flower boxes, which are the city's property, of course, we've just kind of enhanced them with a little bit of color. So if there's any real problem, I guess you can talk to Mr. Heil, because I'm sure he's not happy with my last escapade. On a positive note, I just wanted to mention that St. John's Lutheran has the Strawberry Social next Tuesday. It runs from 4:30 till 7, and they're on the corner of Silver Bay Road and Highway 3, and all are welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Further new business or Councillor's items? Councillor Demery?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just two things. First, Councillor Danch, obviously, if Councillor Kenny provided the moral support and your wife had the shovel, you did nothing. Right? Anyway, that's it. Can I say? All right. Okay, what I really wanted to report was that is on Saturday, June 16th, there is going to be a seatbelt clinic at our local fire hall on Mellenby. The Community Policing Committee is putting this on. Fire department is pitching in and helping with it. OPP officers will be on hand, as well as some other examiners that will help assist people checking the seatbelts, sorry, not seatbelts, car seats, checking the car seats and making sure that they're properly installed, giving advice as to how to remove them, replace them, install them, tell them about the, there is an expiry date on them, let them know about those. And as a little giveaway, there will be either a CO2 detector or a fire alarm given to each person who takes part in the inspection process. So that's Saturday, 10 till 1.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Butters?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm hoping that you can give me an update on what I also hope is going to be a schedule for beach cleaning at Centennial Beach on Vimy Road. I know that you had planned a meeting with staff. I was on my way home from up north and could not attend, unfortunately. And I know Councillor Bodner was away on business, I think, on that day as well. So I was hoping you'd give us an update on what you came up with. One of the residents out there, I'm in contact with her, as I know you are, and those residents are quite anxious to hear what will happen. I was out along there a few days ago, and it's pretty green, and it ain't easy being green. So please give me an update and give me good news.
Mr. Mickens?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we did receive permission to start cleaning the beach, so we have our permits in place, whatever. We are looking at just putting on the annual, it'd be like a couple, like once every 2 weeks or whatever, to try and get down there and clean that beach up. We can't remove a lot of the stuff. We do have some limitations at Nickel Beach with the hop toad. I don't think so much down at the other beach, but we'll be trying to clean it up as best we can and keeping on top of it.
Thank you, Mr. Mickens. I think one of the things that we established during our meeting with staff, Mr. Mickens and his staff, was twofold. One was, unfortunately, we do have the Fowler's toad in those areas, and we have to be careful according to the MNR. And we can only do so much so fast, and of course we have to keep that green stuff on in and around the beach. The second part of it is to really get down there and get our hands dirty. You know, at the end of the day, a lot of it is being frowned upon in terms of the equipment that's being used to get in there and clean a lot of this stuff up, but not so much frowned upon if we just simply do it by hand like we used to do. I remember when I was a student working for the city, working at the beach, you know, our job, and Tommy Lannon was my boss, you know, get out there with the rake and do it by hand. So in talking to Mike Grable, you know, it is what it is, and we have to get out there and do these kind of things, especially at the two main beaches, which is Nickel and over at Centennial. In talking to our colleagues around the region and even across the Great Lakes with my Great Lakes Mayor's colleagues within the association, that's in fact what a lot of people are resorting to. It's just simply going back to the old way when you have these challenges and doing it by hand and rake. And that's in fact what we're going to start doing. I know in talking to Shirkston, they're doing that. Crystal Beach is doing that. But it's going to take some resources. And I'll leave council with this. The one thing that you do want to recognize is that Port Colborne is a waterfront community. You know, our destination in Port Colborne on behalf of the Niagara region is for our beaches, our marina, and our waterfront. Our marina, no question, this year has enhanced itself with a new provider for service. We have the Don Cherry's Sports Bar and Grill down there now. We have Border Pass, Niagara Border Pass wakeboarding. It's really becoming more of a destination. My only comment to council is keep that in mind for next year's budget, because at the end of the day, you know, there's all a cost attached to it, and I know it's tough to swallow, but it is what it is, and it's like anything else, that if you have to put more resources to it, those resources come with a cost. So at the end of the day, those are some of the things that we have to consider when looking at this year, proceeding into next year, and how we're going to deal with those issues. So, anything you want to add to that, Gary?
Exactly right. It just comes down to resources, how many man hours we have to clean up. So there's a cost to that. So.
Thank you. Councillor Butters.
So when I call this resident, do you have like something set in your mind of when they are going to be starting, and then is there somebody that she could be calling if things start getting kind of bad? Who should she be calling to kind of give the heads up, or is there going to be like a regular checking period, or how is this physically going to kind of transpire?
Mr. Makins.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have a date yet, but I will find a date and email that to you when we're going to start cleaning. And then certainly if there's any concerns or whatever, I'll pass on my number, and it's probably best just to contact me. Okay.
Thank you. And I think as well, now you're talking about the beach itself, right? The public beach?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. And what I'm being told from staff as well is that they've already started, and then they're motoring along, but the weather has been playing havoc on us. You know, I think this weekend is proof of that. And it's, unfortunately, the MNR only allows us to do so much. So we're trying to work with them and trying to work with our resources.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Any further new business or councillors' items? Just for updates, guys. Mr. Makins.
To you, Mr. Mayor, just wanted to give an update on the Harbor Master Building. We spoke to Captain Tom Rosaline, the president of the Great Lakes Pilots Association, and he respectfully declined the opportunity to investigate a partnership for use of the Harbor Master Building. Just felt it just wasn't big enough to have more than one in there. So that's fine. He said he'll look at something else.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Makins. Another thing I was going to mention, Ron, Mr. Hanson, to you, is what's happening with Still Street and Elgin Street?
Mr. Mayor, we've the consultants gathered all the data. We've had traffic counts done at Steele and Elgin. They're finalizing a report. We reviewed that just last week with the consultants, Associated Engineering, and they're preparing the final report on that. That'll be coming back to council as soon as it's available, probably in the next couple of weeks.
Next couple of weeks? Great.
And also, I should add to that, there's a peer review related to that development that's at the west end of Elgin Street, and we've actually tied that in because obviously there's going to be some impacts from that particular development. So we're tying that development in with the Steele and Elgin study on top of the initial study that was authorized by council
earlier
this year.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Members of council, any further questions or comments or new business? Members of staff, any further updates? Members of council, please. Members of staff, further updates? Everybody's good? Okay. Let's move on to the adoption of the minutes. Minutes of the 14th meeting regular of Committee of the Whole, dated May 28, 2012. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Bodner. Councillor Doucette. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Members, we're going to move on to the consideration of items lifted this evening. We're going to start off with item 1. Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move that Department of Community and Corporate Services Clerks Division, report number 2012-27, subject amendments to the procedural bylaw be approved, recommending that the amending bylaw required bring effect to the amendments approved for bylaw 4314150002 as amended, being a bylaw to govern the proceedings of council in the committee meetings as enacted by council at its meeting of May 14th, 2012, be presented at the June 11th, 2012 council meeting for approval.
Thank you, Councillor Steele. Have a seconder to that, please. Councillor Doucette. And before I go to questions or comments, I'm going to allow the clerk.
That's what I was going to suggest.
Give some comment on this. Thank you, Councillor Steele. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report was pulled for the purposes of holding a public meeting. And the purpose of the public meeting is to provide an opportunity for public input concerning council's intention to amend the city's procedural bylaw. And there are 4 amendments proposed. The first is to provide that agendas be made available to council on the Thursday prior to the meeting, and that's instead of the current Wednesday. The second amendment is to provide that all documents intended to be included in the council agenda must be received by the city clerk no later than noon on the Tuesday prior to the meeting, and that's rather than the current Monday. The third amendment is to provide that those wishing to be registered as a delegation are required to notify the clerk prior to 10 a.m. on the Thursday prior to the meeting rather than the current Wednesday. And finally, the last amendment is to remove the provision under section 7.5, which provides that the unauthorized release of information considered by council in closed session constitutes an offense under the Provincial Offences Act. And this is outside of the provisions of the Municipal Act, so it requires it's required to be repealed, and repercussions related to the unauthorized disclosure of confidential information are outlined in the Code of Conduct for members of council, local boards, and committees.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Well done. Members of council, questions or comments, please. Councillor Steele.
Just a clarification, maybe because I just read this wrong, was you were stating that anything to be included in the council package is moved from the Monday of the council meeting to the Thursday prior? Is that how I heard what you said?
Madam Clerk.
To clarify, Mr. Mayor, that the reports are, currently reports are provided to the city clerk on the Monday at noon prior to the week before the council meeting. So in this instance, it would be the Tuesday. So not the same day of the council meeting. It would be the week before.
Councillor.
Thank you, Worship. This doesn't change, though, anything, and it goes back to what the issue with the BIA, where if they brought information in the Thursday, the Friday, the Monday of a meeting, that can still be included as either an amendment, not amendment, but in addition to our an addendum, thank you, to whatever particular business we're dealing with that evening, that can still be handed in those days?
Madam Clerk.
That's correct. It doesn't change any of those provisions.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. Further questions or comments, members? The only concern, and Bob, I'm not sure what you can do about this with this new procedure, but the only concern that I have, and I think Gary, Mr. Talassi alluded to it earlier, is with respect to receiving a report on a Thursday when it's released to the public, and then having an interest to be a delegation on the following Monday. Like you don't have much time there. You have hours. Go ahead.
Your Worship, it has always been a problem for notice. You'll recall about 4 years ago, it was Friday was the day that all the agendas were issued, and all the information had to be clerked by Wednesday, and a delegation had to report by Friday at noon, but that was the same day the agendas. This has not changed. We moved it back to Wednesday, but it made so much of a rush for all the staff and reports to get done, and it seemed like reports had to be done 3 weeks ahead of time, and there was new information coming forward. Getting the reports done on a timely fashion to get it to the clerk for Monday at noon for the council meeting following the next week was also a problem from a staff perspective. So this is kind of a saw-off now, moving it to Thursday. However, the more difficult part of all of this has and will continue to be is that the public doesn't know what's on the agenda until it's issued. Right now, the agenda is issued on Wednesday. The agenda is finished. It's done. The reports are not released to the public. What you see on the screen right now is not made public until members of council have it. That's your current process. What we're doing is moving it one more day, so it's Thursday, to give us time at staff to try to produce the reports. There has not been any pre-release of reports to anyone, simply because it's never fair to members of council. You get blindsided. You get, all of a sudden there's a strong effort by the public to call you and to complain, and you don't have the report in your hand. So there is good and valid reason for not giving it to the public until you get it.
If I may, Mr. Howell, I understand that. The concern that I have is that council and the public receive the reports on a Thursday. Yep. And also there's a cutoff to be a delegation for that council meeting on Thursday. So if a member of the public sees the agenda, sees the reports, and wants to make comment on those reports, then they have to set themselves in the queue the same day. Now, the only other, and I'll throw a solution out there as part of the procedural bylaw, and I know at one time, Councillor Bodner, Doucette, Kenny, and Steele, and maybe even Butters, at one time, we had as part of our procedural bylaw the opportunity to simply ask members of the gallery if they would like to speak on a report. Now, and that was a good habit to get into, on the report. It's one thing to want to be a delegation on the Thursday deadline, but to speak on a report that's in our agenda, it's contained within our agenda, what council may want to consider doing is allowing the head of council, whoever that person may be, to allow or to ask if members of the gallery, if they want to speak on a report that's being presented to council. So what I would actually do is that I would ask members of council for questions or comments, and I think the councilors can recall this back in the early 2000s we used to do this. And then after you're finished asking questions or comments, I would turn to the gallery and say, is there any member of the gallery that would also like to speak on this report? So that's a solution, and I'm throwing that out there for consideration. Mr. Heil?
Your Worship, we do that somewhat now. If we know there's going to be delegation, the clerk has, and if you check back in all of the agendas that she's issued for you, if there is a report that someone wants to speak on it, she includes a notation that Mr. or Mrs. or a company or something may wish to speak on the report. And it is right now, and has been your practice, Mr. Mayor, to, rather than invite comments on all the reports, is if you know somebody's there that wants to speak on it, and we know it, we've actually put it in the agenda. We can, or you can, Your Worship, simply do that as a course of business, and we could bring in a further amendment in respect to how that can happen. Our intention, Your Worship, in the revised agenda that the clerk sent out in a report not that long ago, we'll speaking to all the reports on the screen. It's going to be live eventually. If we get there, I guess the clerk is shooting for the end of this year to have that, but it should help.
Thank you, Mr. Howell. Councillor Demery?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That would be it would be a very good way of handling it, but in the interest of fairness, how do we deal with the reports that have not been lifted? There may be someone out there that wants to speak to them.
Well, and from past experience, they would let you know that. Past experience, and I go back, and I think, Ron, when you were sitting in this chair too, I'm not sure if you still have the procedural bylaw consistent with that, but I think for the most part, people will inform you if they want to speak on a certain report. Either by phone call, they just kind of give you a tap on the shoulder when you're walking into the chamber. But I think it's only fair that yes, a delegation, when it's just a typical delegation like we had tonight, that had no report on the agenda, and that's why, Councillor Steele, my comments to you about comments and debate versus questions, because there was no report. So things like that are fine to have a Thursday deadline, because it's not reliant upon the agenda. But when it is reliant upon the agenda, I think it would just be fair to allow the public to show up at a meeting and want to speak on a report. So what I would recommend to council is, and in fairness to the clerk, because she's put a lot of work into this, is to refer that part of this back to Ashley, for her to come back with and report on that particular item, when it comes to delegations on reports to council. Madam Clerk, would that be fair?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As it stands right now, the bylaw is prepared, and any changes would require that the bylaw be withdrawn and then brought forward at a subsequent council meeting. I would maybe like to recommend that, yeah, you could either refer it or you could pass it this evening as status quo, and I could simply report back on these options that have been discussed at council, and we could entertain a further amendment at that time.
Great. Thank you, Ashley. Mr. Howe?
Your Worship, what we will also do is when the agenda is issued, we will write on it. If there is any report or any information on the reports or on the agenda that are of interest or of concern and wish to be spoken to, they should contact the clerk as soon as possible to advise the mayor prior to the meeting on the Monday night that they wish to speak on it. It would just be a standard.
That's fair enough.
That we will add right to the memorandum until the clerk can bring your report back on change of the bylaw.
But again, I know from past experience, I would just basically say, is there anybody out here that wants to speak on this report? So, but no, that's great. Thank you, Ashley, and thank you, Mr. Howe. Councillor Butter?
Mr. Mayor, so we're going to get back a suggestion on how to do this, and can we include in that the time frame that people are allowed to speak, just as a refresher to council, and if council wants to, you know, decrease, or I think we've all been faced with that at some time where, you know, it can, anyways, let alone councilors going on forever, you know, sometimes the public repeats themselves a few times. So.
Sure, fair enough. Thank you, Councillor. So I'll leave it to Council's pleasure. Ashley's given you two options: either pass the report, and she'll come back with some amendments, or simply refer this back to staff. I would recommend the former, where we have passed the report, and Ashley can just simply come back with an amendment to it at a future date. Councillor Steele, you okay with that?
Sounds good.
And the seconder? Who was the seconder? Councillor Doucette. You're okay with that? Okay. Members of council, any further comments or questions? Members of staff, any questions or comments? Further? You're okay? Mr. Howe, you're okay?
I'm fine, Your Worship.
Okay. Your pleasure, members. All those in favor? Opposed? That'll be carried. Thank you. Item 8, Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the Department of Engineering and Operations Division Report number 2012-18, subject Energy Management Planning, be approved, recommending that the Council accept Report 2012-18, Energy Planning for information, and that the Council directs staff to purchase a subscription to the LAS web-based energy planning tool at an annual subscription cost of $200 to be funded out of account 0540-7610-3369, and that Council directs staff to form an Energy Conservation Committee, and that the Council appoint at least one member of Council to sit on the committee, and that Council directs staff to assemble and compile all information necessary for compliance with the requirements of Ontario Regulation 397-11 and submit the summary reports and plans by legislated deadlines.
Thank you, Councillor Desmarais. Before I ask for a seconder, is there a member of council that would like to sit on this committee? Councillor Doucette? Councillor Desmarais, did you want to add that as part of your recommendation?
Actually, yes, I would.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder to that amended recommendation? Councillor Danch? Questions or comments? I'm assuming you accept?
I accept.
All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you, Councillor Desmarais and Doucette. Members, I'm now going to ask for any notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion? With no notices, motion to adjourn this portion of tonight's agenda. Councillor Danch, Councillor Doucette, all those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. We'll now move on to our council meeting. Madam Clerk, are there any addendum items?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. None this evening.
Thank you. Members of council, I need a motion to confirm the agenda, please. Councillor Bodner, Councillor Desmarais, are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Disclosures of interest, are there any disclosures this evening? If none, we'll move on to the adoption of the minutes. I have two sets of minutes here, the minutes of the 18th meeting special of council dated May 25th, 2012, and the minutes of the 19th meeting regular of council dated May 28th, 2012. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Danch, Councillor Doucette, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. Are there any items requiring a separate discussion? For the items listed on the agenda, mover and seconder, please. Councillor Bodner, Councillor Kenny, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. I do have three sets of minutes, members. I'm going to do them in block, if you don't mind, of boards, commissions, and committees. The minutes of the new Community Center Advisory Committee meeting of May 15th, 2012. The minutes of the Canal Days Committee meeting of April 18th, 2012. And the minutes of the Joint Board of Management Niagara Region Courts meeting dated April 24th, 2012. Mover and seconder, please. Mover and seconder. Councillor Kenny, Councillor Butters. Questions or comments? Oh, I see that. All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. I usually get accused of looking this way all the time. I'm trying to balance it out here this evening. Give me a break, guys. Is there any notice of motion, members? With none, Madam Clerk, the introduction of the bylaws, please.
Thank you. That the following bylaws be read a first, second, third time and finally passed. Bylaw 58136812 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 4314-15002, a bylaw to govern the proceedings of council and committee meetings. Bylaw 58146912 being a bylaw to establish a schedule of rates and fees for on-ice advertising at the Valley Health and Wellness Center. Bylaw 58157012, a bylaw to amend bylaw 58056012, a bylaw to set and levy rates of taxation for city purposes for the year 2012. Bylaw 58167112 being a bylaw to appoint Rick Shirk to the Accessibility Advisory Committee, and finally bylaw 58177212 being a bylaw respecting permits for construction, demolition, occupancy, and change of use, transfer of permits and inspections, and to repeal bylaw 24011790 and all amendments thereto.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Members of Council, mover and seconder, please. Councillor Butters, Councillor Steele. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Madam Clerk, the confirmatory bylaw, please.
That the following bylaw be read a first, second, third time and finally passed. Bylaw 58187312 being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Port Colborne at its regular meeting of Council of June 11, 2012.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Danch. Councillor Steele. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Where'd that Barrett go anyways? You know, he took a shot at us tonight about this council meeting. And I got to say to him, have you guys watched the regional council meeting lately? It stirs up pretty good, I'll tell you.
Realize we're unique.
We deal with things. There's some nights at the regional council meeting, boy, I really ought to shake my head. To say the very least. I see Mary Ann does too. Before I ask members of council, before I ask for a motion to go into closed session, I do want to inform Councillor Danch that the current score is 3-0 LA. You got it with you? Okay. Members, I will be looking for a recommendation to go into closed session, and that council now proceed to go in camera in order to address the following matter. It's a confidential report number 2012-06 of the Chief Administrator Officer's Office, Human Resources Division, pursuant to the Municipal Act 2001, subsection 2392B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and as well labor relations or employee negotiations. Members, of a mover and seconder, please. Councillor Butters, Councillor Steele, are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Have a wonderful week.